Hi, everyone. Welcome to Forbes Newsroom. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Dan Alexander, who covers money and politics for Forbes. Dan, we're talking about the race that never ends in Georgia, but will end soon. Tell us, give us the latest on Herschel Walker and co., I like to call it.
Well, it's neck and neck. Neither of these guys got 50% on election day. And so here we are in a runoff situation again in Georgia. It feels like this happens every time these days. And, there's no real telling what's going to happen. Some of the polls, the recent polls show that Warnock, the Democrat, is leading Herschel Walker, the Republican. But of course, we know that polls only tell you so much. And early voting has already begun, but the actual runoff election day is December 6th. And so shortly after that, then we'll finally know what the numbers will be in the Senate for the next 2 years.
So there's been no sense of momentum shifting since the stakes have become a little less intense around this particular race?
It's just hard to tell. I mean, like I said, some of the recent polls show that Warnock is ahead by a few points. But these guys were neck and neck last time, both of them at around 49%. And things can shift quickly in a matter of weeks. Here we are, there's still at least another week until election day. Things could continue to shift. I think that this one really is a toss up at this point, and we won't know now until after December 6th.
So I want to remind people of the staggering amounts of money that have been poured into this race. And I know a lot of it was, back when it perhaps felt to be one of the critical races. Can you talk a bit more about that? Because it seems to far outstrip others.
Obviously, this race has been one of the key races for the control of the U.S. Senate now, and everybody knew it for a long time. So what's the result? It's that people from both Georgia and all over the country have been pouring tons of money into it. If you look at Warnock, his campaign itself has disclosed receiving about $176 million. That's more than double the next highest Senate candidate raised anywhere in the country, which is Mark Kelly in Arizona, who raised something like $80 million. So
Yeah.
He has this enormous amount of money flowing into his campaign. Now, the interesting dynamic here is that Herschel Walker, who raised the fourth most of any Senate candidate this year, but far, far less than Warnock, he was at about 58 million. He ended up getting swells of money in via super PACs. So you have your campaign, which the candidates control, and then you have super PACs that don't theoretically control, but people can limited donations into those. And Herschel Walker has many more big billionaire donors than Warnock does. So when you balance it all out, you sort of have the big money from the little guys on Warnock's side, and you have the big money from the big guys on Walker's side. And it just leads to an enormously expensive race. I'm sure that people down in Georgia will be glad to have commercials about something else here in a few weeks.
Well, talk about those super PACs. Are they mobilizing around particular issues, any particular names that you tease out, and have those names, again, acted differently since, we have this rare interim period where there's a second election season that must feel very different from the first one that got us here in the first place. Like, who are some of the donors, and are they continuing to rally around him to the same extent?
Yeah, so we don't have full data yet for what's happened in the last few weeks. That won't come out for a little while until after the election. But what we do know is that some of these names of the big billionaires are names that you'd expect. So Bernie Marcus has been a large billionaire donor for Republicans for years, co-founder of Home Depot based in Atlanta. No surprise, he's one of Herschel Walker's biggest donors. Kelly Loeffler, who's married to a billionaire and used to hold a Senate seat in Georgia. She has also been one of Walker's larger donors. You've also got Ken Langone, who's considered one of the co-founders of Home Depot, along with Bernie Marcus. He's one of the big donors. And then you've got sort of the usual suspects that you're seeing in all of the major races across the country. So Dick Uihlein, the packaging billionaire, Jeff Yass, who's a trading billionaire. Both of those guys have put a lot of money into this race. And then you go through smaller amounts from people like Steve Wynn and Trevor Reese Jones, all these sort of right-leaning billionaires who might not be from Georgia, might not have connections to Georgia, but look at this race and see one that could ultimately have a big impact on what's the makeup of the Senate. And so they're putting in, $100,000 here, $250,000 there, which for them is like the equivalent of finding a penny in their couch.